Happy Sunday, ladies and gentlemen. It is time once again for Two Girls, One Rant. As you can tell by the image that I have up here, we are talking about the LGBTQ and they're constantly adding on initials to represent the community as a whole. And I've got the most recent flag up here, as you can see, that I believe encompasses, I would say, the majority of the different identities that we have now. And so today we just kind of want to talk about some people's experiences, as well as the current stance on things. Things are changing in the world. You know, people are being allowed to be accepted for who they are, as they always should have been, but unfortunately it hasn't always been that way. So we're going to talk about that and other things. We have Tim and Jay on, as well as Kasey. So we are going to head over there right now and say hello. All right. Hello, you lovely people.
Hi. Hello.
All right. So, Destiny, if you want to start us off today.
Why? Why me? All right.
Because I'm picking on you because I didn't.
I know.
I'm a horrible co-host. I did not fully prepare.
All right. So I feel like what we'll do is we'll introduce ourselves first. Given the LGBT topic, we'll introduce ourselves. Obviously, I'm not sure if you did yours in the intro as far as like where you stand on the LGBT spectrum, if you're an ally, that sort of thing.
Oh, I did not.
Okay, so we'll start off with you, then we'll go to me, Kasey, then Tim and Jay. And just kind of specify like, hi, you know, Destiny, I'm this, and I either am an ally or I am part of the LGBT via, you know, I'm gay or bi or pan.
Gotcha. Well, hi, my name is Malika, and I'm addicted to coffee. Oh, wait, wrong group. But no, I do not fall on the spectrum. I am your typical white straight female. However, I do identify myself as a major ally to others because I feel that, especially in our high tech world and everything, it's biological. Everybody's born this way, and they should be allowed to express themselves this way freely and without persecution. So I want to create a nice, safe haven for everybody to be accepted for who they are.
Beautiful. I'm Destiny. I am a sexuality that people aren't familiar with, and that is I'm a demisexual. Demisexual is someone I can't be attracted to somebody unless I make an actual like spiritual connection with the person, which is why I typically have trouble finding a mate. So I have to actually truly get to know a person before I actually start catching feelings for them. I can't do it based off of physical stuff. It's purely spiritual and a connection between me and that person. I'm also an ally, and I didn't come out as demisexual until about a year ago.
All right, you're up, Kasey.
Hey y'all, I'm Kasey. You might have heard me in previous podcasts that I am a raging bisexual. It's been an ongoing journey as far as just figuring out like what I'm into. I'm pretty much, I guess, the opposite of what you would be, Destiny, of like, it doesn't matter who the person is. I just want to get it on with them if I find them attractive. But also a staunch ally.
Fair enough.
In every aspect, as far as ensuring that everybody on the spectrum is heard, including the intersectionality with it.
Tim and Jay?
Pointing at me to go first. Hi, I'm Tim. You guys keep using the word raging, and I need like a more aggressive. I'm an obnoxious homosexual.
I'm a violent homosexual.
Well, see, violent just seems really no, because I'm like a little pansy. Like I don't fight. I can't do it.
What about flamboyant and proud?
No, we'll do obnoxious.
Oh, okay. That works too.
I'm an obnoxious homosexual. Yeah, no, 100% obnoxious homosexual. Echoing what Kasey said, all about focusing on intersectionality. And that's it. I'm just obnoxious.
Jay, obviously.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jay. I'm not obnoxious, but I am homosexual. It's so funny how like the times change too, because I feel like in high school I was like very flamboyant, but nowadays I'm like more run of the mill basic, I guess you could say. So I wouldn't classify myself as like super extra or super flamboyant, but yeah, and it's so interesting because like I think I'm like on the road to being like more sex positive because I used to be a producer person. So it's like I'm a homosexual, but given a situation, I will like with attraction and being sex positive, I wouldn't like say no to a sexual experience with a you know a female or a non-binary person or a transgender person either. So
That's definitely interesting. I want to hear more about that once we kind of get into things. 'Cause
Disruptive noises.
I feel like you said that before, but
My
I
alerts
haven't
are
really
off.
heard more about that, honestly.
I win, LJ, but thank you for the
it's
resubscription.
I know like my like mainly I'm attracted to men, but it's like if you're in a situation like with a woman or a non-binary person or a transgender woman or a transgender man, it's like, and you have that attraction, you don't want to just contain yourself in a box and say, oh, I can't be attracted, I can't have sexual feelings for the person because they're not a homosexual man.
Does it come
That's-
all down to the personality for you in those cases?
I mean, personality and definitely, looks are, always a factor for everybody, I think.
Well, I've noticed that attraction to looks, to me at least, changes on the person's personality. Like, you'll see like the average straight guy who looks like what we would classify as a jock. And to me, he's not that attractive because there is nothing behind that personality at all.
Yeah. Someone who's like just dead personality is like, no, we're good.
Yeah, it's a package.
This is where I differ from y'all. I can be extremely shallow about my partners when I choose to be, but that changes as far as like how serious I would be willing to get with them. Flings here or there versus a committed relationship.
Well, and I've known people who, regardless of orientation, because I've seen it in all orientations, is that some are able to separate the relationship and sex is just sex, and then there's others where both have to go hand in hand. And I think that's just a personal preference.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. All right, so what we'll go into next, now that we've done our introductions, is I think the best way to start out would be, when did you first realize that you may have been LGBT? Like, what was your first thing? Like, this is very different. What was that thing? And for Mel, you obviously you're not LGBT, but if you have any kind of like interesting, aspects from that, you can also share. I'll let Kasey go first on this one, then the boys. I'll go after the boys.
See, that's a difficult question because I don't think there was any like real one moment. It was just like a culmination of things where I realized I was like a little bit different. But as far as like accepting it, probably would honestly have to be when I was watching like I always had my inclination of liking the same gender and everything, but I was always able to like be quiet and just pawn it off as being like overly friendly with someone. But I think the real thing that really made me be like, oh, okay, so people can have these feelings towards like everyone, was Doctor Who and Captain Jack, I think was the character's name, and how he didn't have any preference as far as the gender goes for the partners that he chose with. He just liked to sleep around with who he liked. So
That makes sense. Tim, when I know you've mentioned it a couple times, like how like what your awakening was, but what would you explain yours to be?
I feel like I have so many different awakenings. I keep rewriting my awakening. I would say definitively, after much soul searching, it was probably 1999 when I had the first inkling, and it was Power Rangers Lost Galaxy when the Red Ranger is, for whatever freaking reason, on an island with a little enemy, and he has to rip off his shirt to fight Trakina. And I specifically remember this moment, and it's in the freaking it's in the theme song too. And I was like, that's interesting. That's interesting. And then that just like sat in the back of my head for a few years, and it wasn't really until like I think I was 14 or 15 that I actually was like, oh, there's a term for this. Okay. And then I discovered Queer as Folk on Showtime, which is not by any means a definitive representation, but it was our Glee of the early 2000s, if you will, as far as representation goes. So then I was like, oh, okay, I guess I am an obnoxious, raging homosexual. Here we are. Here we are.
Embrace
Jay?
it proudly.
Yes.
So for me, I feel like, I don't know, I guess my sexual awakening was really young, which is, I think, kind of weird to talk about, like, when you're like such a small kid and talk about sexual awakenings. But I remember this film called Ever After with Drew Barrymore and Angelica Houston, and the guy who was in it,
Oh,
the love
yes.
interest, I can't remember his name, but he had these like tight-looking pants the whole movie, and his like
Oh,
crotch
yeah.
was just very in your face the whole movie. And I just like remember just being like very focused on that area, and I never understood why. And then
That's
you know,
nice.
yeah, it was really weird. And then as I got older, I noticed like my attraction to men, but I didn't know that that's what it was. And then as I started like getting into teenage years and really started like having like urges or like definitive attraction towards men, it was like I grew up in a family that was very very cut off from that. They're very religious, so it was very no. So I thought I'd bury it down and maybe it would just go away. But other people started to notice that my interests in old movies and like very things at that time you would call more feminine, although it's just likes and dislikes. And it was just very like a very complicated weaving road towards like coming out. And I just started telling like very few people at first, and then eventually I was like, I don't care, I'm gay, I like men, I'm very attracted to men, so very wide
yeah.
road for me.
I feel like a lot of us have the religious like oppression growing up when it comes to sexuality. It's a lot of people with that. And in my case, I'm gonna reveal a secret between Tim and I that I enjoy revealing, to be honest. And
If it's what I think you're thinking.
I'm gonna be very subtle about it. So throughout school, I like boys, but I had the demisexual thing where it was like I think they're cute, but I am not like super gung-ho about them. There was only one kid out of my entire school life that I ever felt like a connection to, but he was way out of my league. I was like a 250-pound kid trudging through the halls and wishing somebody gave me any sort of attention. Anyways, when it came to dating, trying to do some things, trying to experiment, trying to figure out who I am. Well, in school, I ended up dating this girl, and safe to say, it didn't really work out. And then Tim ended up dating the same girl, and it didn't work out. And we ended up just kind of almost going opposite directions. So he dated a girl and was like, "Nope, not for me." I dated the girl and was like, "I don't think it's for me." So it's kind of like, I thought that was kind of funny. That was probably I didn't have like a TV show. I didn't have a TV show where it was like, I see a lady and I think that she's pretty and I would like to stick things in her. But it was more so like the physical connect, like not physical, the emotional connections with people. That's when I was like, I really like this person. Like if I'm not like, okay, so I'm gonna be very frank with you. If I'm really good friends with you, and I mean really good friends with you, I'm probably emotionally fucking you. That's just how it is. Whereas Kasey would be more like, if I'm friends with you, I probably would fuck you. It's me is emotional.
The call out.
I'm just saying, I know you.
Your face,
Living
Kasey.
for
It's
this.
precious.
Because she knows I'm right.
That's
So
true.
I didn't really have like an awakening. It was more just me trying to figure out who I am. There was a time where I thought I was bi, and I came out to my dad, and bless him, he's super religious. He was raised religious. He did not like that. I tried to be open and transparent. My mom was indifferent. She was just like, I don't want you, going to hell, for being bi. And I was like, I'm not. But so I ended up just burying that down, and I didn't talk to them anymore about it. But I think about a year ago is when I found out demisexual was like a term, and it really fit me. So I'd say officially about a year ago is when I came out. But yeah.
So obviously for me, I don't have a coming out story. But I guess what I could say is more on why I'm an ally. So my mom, bless her, a very, very open-minded individual. And I do come from a religious family where I think if I was in your guys' shoes, I would have a very hard time coming out. But for my mom's side of the family, they're actually very open and accepting of it. Because they recognize that through, especially my grandmother, which is odd to say, she knows that there are scientific studies that say that, your brain chemistry when you're born dictates that this is part of who you are. So the whole stereotype that used to go on of, well, you're choosing to be this way. No, you're not choosing to be this way. This is who you are, and there is nothing wrong with it. And so for me, being in the rural community that I am, where I don't have much exposure to this, my first experiences with those who are gay, I just sat for a moment, thought about it, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. It really just didn't faze me a whole lot. And now one of the people who's my very best friends, met her as Martin, and now she is Amala to us all. And I got to actually witness, virtually at least, her whole transition. Going from, I know that I don't identify as a male. I'm not gay, but what am I? And then figuring out that, oh, I'm transgender. I identify as a woman. And now that she's actually going through hormone therapy, which is a blessing because her body was trying to do it itself. Like she had the equivalent of like 3 months into therapy on her own willpower. And now she's going through actually the therapy and everything else. And she was so worried about, because she drives truck for a living, so worried about being put out on the streets and homeless for coming out to her family. And with luck, her whole family has embraced her with so open arms, where I think it was even the stepfather was just like, about damn time. We already knew. But that kind of leads me to what I want to talk about next is, we do see a lot of good, empowering, and positive stories, but unfortunately, the reality of history leading up to even now is there's not always good stories. So, I mean, have you guys, as far as family and friends, have you guys been lucky to have a supportive and encouraging environment?
I'll start this one off. And then whoever wants to go next. I obviously, like I said, my parents were religious, so I really didn't have them. But it's not like they weren't supportive. They still loved me. They just wanted me to not be gay or LGBT, But I had really supportive friends growing up, and thankfully, I had a very diverse group of friends because I was in theater. So it was like theater and chorus. It's full of gays. It just comes down to it. We're all gay in some way. If you're in theater and in chorus, to some degree,
Accurate.
You've thought it. So everybody's really supportive. Even if you, most of the time throughout school, you're still in the closet. You don't know what you are. You're still trying to figure things out. But your friends are going to be there. They're going to support you. And I'm very thankful that I had the friends that I did growing up, because they're the ones that kept me searching for like who I was. And even now outside, I've got Kasey, Tim, and Jay. I know them in real life, and they're super supportive, and they're insanely intelligent about all different topics that that have to do with, you know, obviously LGBT and other matters as well. So I'm very thankful that I have the support system in my friends group that I have. I would say that I didn't encounter any kind of issues growing up regarding sexuality. Nobody assumed I was gay. Nobody assumed I was straight. It was just like they just saw me as a person. It could also be that I was like a big person, so they were just like, "You're fat," and then nothing else. So that could be it. But
that fat shaming is a whole nother topic.
Yeah, I'm just saying they probably they looked right past the what is she? Is she gay? Because I do come off kind of masculine sometimes to some people, and I do get kind of mistaken now outside of school. Like, is she a lesbian? But I'm not. But in school I didn't.
Yeah, but that's the whole tomboy personality too, though. Is that I got that growing up as well. Because like I didn't wear dresses or skirts for the longest time, you know, and the whole tomboy personality is like, well, is she butch?
Yeah.
Like, no, it doesn't mean that she's butch. Tim and Jay, do you guys have anything, like, do you have a really supportive network of friends or family, or were there any obstacles that you had to cross?
Oh my gosh, how much time do we have?
Well, we normally go for
Hour and a
about
half.
2 hours. Yeah, we got about an hour and
Ooh.
a half. So can we get the TLDR version?
Oh yeah, no, of course. Support group friends, like definitely for sure, because I've got Destiny and Kasey I've known half of my life. And I think really I came out to my friends long before I ever came out to my family, who I would say, and I feel like a lot of LGBTQ youth learn firsthand immediately, is that family is sometimes the bigger bully. And I'd say for at least, God, from age of 14 till about maybe even 20, I was having to like prove or fake some kind of straightness just to keep peace within my family. And it was the TLDR version. I'm still unpacking some of the things that went on with that. So, you know, that's fun. But honestly, the support system of friends and just finding your own family and learning how to go about that, and then doing the healing after finding the support. Find the support first, then do the healing, because the support, they'll carry you. Oh my gosh.
They'll definitely help you with that healing. Now,
100%.
Tim, you've actually said something twice now that has kind of really piqued my curiosity. So would it be safe to say, like, and I guess this could be said of any straight person too, but you know how when we grow, like there's certain like age brackets where we tend to take a huge mental leap forward. So would it be safe to say that in your own self-discovery, like it's not just necessarily one coming out, it's you find different landmarks of, shoot, it's a bad day for my brain to be scrambled. But different landmarks as far as self-discovery and finding what you like and what you don't like and what defines you.
I would say so. I'd say there's discovery, there's self-actualization to a degree, because obviously we're not going to know every facet of ourselves at like the age of 15, 16, because we're still forming. And then I would say there's even the landmark of private expression and actually acting on what we're discovering, and that's just private expression with ourselves, or you know, like with say,
or with your partner.
lovers, with your partner. And then there's public expression with people outside of your immediate group, you know. So I would 100% agree that landmarks are definitely a thing, because it's also wading the waters in a sense of what you feel safe expressing and showing to the world, and then reacting to what the world is telling you is acceptable, which is also a tricky thing too, especially with, you know, growing up. I think same-sex marriage wasn't legal in Virginia until, I'm just like so outing where we are, oopsies, It wasn't legal until like 2014.
15.
15. I'm off by a year. Sorry, my math is terrible. And so it's just like navigating just how comfortable society is with you, because it's also a disruption once you're actually like expressing yourself in the face of like that. Because I think pre-Glee, it wasn't so fun.
Okay, thank you. Somebody else agrees with me on that. I hate Glee.
No, I can't stand it. Like that was I
It's
joke around
great
with Jay.
watching though.
It is. No, I joke with Jay that it's like it's where society started to actually like turn a little, like a smidge, because we had little Kurt Hummel, and like I hate that was like the bit, but it kind of was for some regard of it, and yeah, no, there's definitely landmarks, and taking into context as well, like just what was going on culturally at the moment, because that also plays a part too.
Yeah, and I actually want to hang on to that thought after we get to Jay and Kasey, because that brings me to the next bit I want to talk about is the cultural acceptance that we've seen. Because safe to assume you guys are in your late 20s age bracket. Okay,
Yes.
all right, so I'm 35, so I'm not that much older. We probably have seen a lot of the same things. Because when you're a little kid, like early grade school, like a lot of this stuff doesn't come to mind. Because I mean, you're a kid, you don't have those kind of realizations till like when you hit puberty. So Jay, I'll let you go next, and we'll get to that subject after Kasey.
So, hard to know where to begin because I really didn't have a lot of support until one, I figured out what was going on with me myself, and I was honest with myself about, my sexuality and my identity and all that stuff. And it's really unfortunate because like with my sisters especially, I have such supportive sisters who I could have come out to them at the age of like 12 and they would have been, super supportive because one of my sisters was always preaching to my family about, gay rights and everything like that long before I came out.
Good.
In a way, I wish I would have come out sooner, but it didn't feel safe to me because I really didn't have a support group at all until about high school, and then like Tim and Destiny said, with my friends now, with Kasey and Destiny and Tim. And my parents have gotten so much better about it, but I grew up in a family that was very heavy on toxic masculinity, and a man needed to play sports and be surrounded by women, and I never was that person. So I found solace and support, weirdly, this is going to sound a little strange, in powerful women figures. So I would watch like old movies with Betty Davis, and she was telling men to go to hell. And I discovered the musical Wicked, and the character of Elphaba, like really just, I felt safe there. So I felt safe in powerful women identities, and that's kind of my go-to now. But growing up with it and figuring it out for myself without a support group was I think it made me stronger, but it was very tough waters for many, many years.
Well, those experiences really do forge who you become and what your personality is towards whatever the subject may be. But I don't find it odd, actually, to find that kind of inspiration in strong female figures. Not that they're female, but it doesn't matter who they are or what their orientation is, so long as the message that they preach and the strength that they have speaks to you, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And it really did, in a lot of ways. It's like I was identifying with characters and stories that I wish I could have been like, or at least I wish I had fighting for me in my life, because I really didn't have that for a very long time.
Well, I'm glad that you do have it now, because I've noticed that before, like using Amala as another example, is going from the beginning where she really didn't have a support group. Like I was the support group. And then finally she found a Discord actually for the LGBT community, specifically for the trans community. And she made a lot of friends there. Actually found some people close to home because she's Australian. And it's not that America is more progressed actually in that regard than Australia is, but Australia is getting a lot better. But having that support group really makes a huge difference. Once that starts expanding, I feel is when somebody's able to really take off for self-discovery.
And I like absolutely, because now with being Tim and Destiny and Kasey, they're so, you know, forward progressive than any people I've met. That now I'm like I mentioned before, I'm on the road to like being more sex positive than I ever was. Like the way I think about sex now is completely different than it was even 5 years ago. So
Hell yeah, Kasey, we made him sexual.
yeah, you know, for like really, honestly, you did.
I was like, what the fuck? What about
Oh
me?
yeah.
Well, Tim obviously did, but you know that goes.
I don't have to boast what I do for this man.
I know. I'll do it for you. I know he would typically do this, so I know he's not on cam, but he does this a lot.
Yep. Exactly. And I have no hair. I just want everybody to know. Like,
We'll get a wig on you.
you
Yeah.
can see,
And then you
I
can do
look
it.
so good in a
Don't do
wig.
that.
He's too powerful with a wig.
You
There's
can't know.
It's
he's
He
not
can't-
allowed to have.
Oh no.
Uncontrolled, unchecked power.
I had to stop working in an office setting because one of my coworkers got a really bad wig and I took it from her and I was unstoppable. I got so much done that day. Too much power.
All right, Kasey, let's hear from you. Support groups, troubles.
Yeah, so like Tim said, you know, Tim and I especially like have known each other for so long. And I remember like when Tim came to me and you know, told me,
Hey,
"Hey,
Mooncloud.
you know, I'm gay." And I was just like, "Okay." Like I mean, it didn't seem like it should have been a problem for some, like how some people would view it as. I was totally for it. And then it got me thinking, and I didn't come out to him at that time because I was still struggling and still like not thinking about it. I wish I would have in that moment said, "Hey, you know, I kind of understand where you're coming from. Like, I have feelings about girls and guys and, you know, people in between and whatnot." But as far as my family goes, it's only been recently that I've come out to them. And my mom's super supportive. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that she specifically found one of those few Catholic masses and like leadership within there that was actually super pro LGBTQ, to the point that the father who was running it would do secret ceremonies for people before it was okayed and before it was even legalized. Like, he would do ceremonies for people. And then I always grew up in a very sex positive household. I mean, for goodness sakes, when you walked into our house, we had this giant picture of two naked dudes. So like it was art.
Nice.
It was eclectic from like Rome and whatnot and everything. And then we always had the Greek and goddess like god and goddess statues that were nude all over the house.
Fig leaf or no fig leaf?
No fig leaf.
Ah, okay.
So like it was like there, and it was always like, hey, you know, it's not a terrible thing, you know, just if you do it, be mindful of it, kind of thing. I also think my mom's upbringing, her aunt, which would be my great aunt, it was a lesbian in the sense that she passed away, unfortunately. But she was definitely a great source for me. I remember one time going out in Iowa and like talking to her about it, and she just was so happy that I felt comfortable enough talking to her about it. And so that's like one really good memory I'm glad I had with her before she passed away. But I think found family is definitely a very important thing. The only real thing I had was, I remember when I was going and signing up for the military and everything, Don't Ask, Don't Tell wasn't reappealed at that point. So I had a recruiter who like looked me up and down and just assumed. And he was just like, "I want to make it very clear, you know, whatever you do in the bedroom, you better keep it in the bedroom and don't talk to anybody about it because you'll get kicked out." And I actually met people while I was in who got kicked out because it was found that they weren't straight. and who, as soon as Don't Ask, Don't Tell was reappealed, actually rejoined the military because they were so happy that they could come back in. But yeah.
I
Well,
think that's silly. If you're going to serve the country, regardless of your color or your sexuality, you should be able to serve the country.
and
Yeah,
not
well,
just
and
the country.
I think there's also like when there's like the struggle of like biphobia and those who see bisexuality as a kink to facilitate where you can be somebody's unicorn. And while I do
Cookie.
enjoy going out and having one night stands with people, the amount of times I've had so many awkward interactions where it's looking for a third, but really it's I'm only doing this because my partner wants to do it and my partner's not fully comfortable in doing it. And usually it doesn't end well. So
Exactly. Moon Cloud in chat hits the nail right on the head. You should be able to do anything regardless of color, sexuality, or other factors. And I 100% agree with it. Not just the military, but jobs as well. There have been plenty of job discriminations because somebody might be lesbian or gay. You know, not to dumb it down just to those two categories, but, you know, there is a lot of bias and phobias against it, as well as your religious factors as well. You know, it should be based on merit and credit and your ability to do the job, not what your orientation is. And that really kind of segues us into the next part of, you know, social acknowledgement or social tolerance. And I hate the word tolerance in that phrase as well, just for the record, because I don't think it ever should be a tolerance, so to speak. Because I remember that a lot of our parents are in like were born in around the 50s, and in that generation it was not accepted at all. Like you didn't have all these multiple categories. Like I'm not even sure if bisexual was considered a category. It was just lesbian or gay is how they would refer to people. And I noticed this increase in divorces around the year 2000 when being gay was considered a lot more acceptable and a lot of people were coming out, and a lot of these guys just fit in because, like Jay was saying, the stereotypical man was like the ideal thing that you had to fit into. And a lot of now that being gay was considered more socially acceptable, a lot of these families were getting divorces because the guy finally is like, hey, I can be free, motherfuckers. You know, is that a trend that you guys noticed as well?
I'd say it's a different kind of trend. I'm one of those people that believes most people actually fall on some sort of spectrum with their sexuality. And I think that's where the discourse of you get to choose to be straight or gay comes out of, because I think a lot of people are just not willing to be open to the idea that they're into things that, you know, society or their religion tells them that they should be. So in that moment, you can be like, oh, well, I chose, even though like I liked both, I chose the right way and, you know, chose the opposite gender.
I feel like I forgot what the spectrum was called, but there's like whatever that spectrum is where it's like you could be like 10% gay and then the rest straight. I forgot what that one's called. So if anybody
Kinsey
remembers,
scale.
which one is it?
Kinsey scale.
Kinsey scale,
Yeah.
that's right. So when I found out about the Kinsey scale, I was like, that makes sense because I know that I'm a demisexual, which is, yeah, I'm emotionally connected with somebody. That's the only way I can be in a relationship with someone first. The looks come after. But when it comes to like percentage, like as far as me being attracted to women, it's like, and if you hear my dog, I'm sorry. If it's like 10%, I'd say like if I had a percentage as far as like where I'm at or like what number between 1 and 10, I'd say as far as attraction to women, I could rate myself about a 2. Like I can see a woman be like, she's pretty hot. I am thinking things, but for the most part, I'm typically attracted to men because I like the
And
masculine.
Timothy, thank you for the follow.
Kind of
I'm sorry I missed that.
side
I've got
of
my
a
alerts
man.
off.
But sometimes I enjoy the femininity of a woman. So the scale makes sense to me because it's like on a, I forgot what, I think it was 1 to 10 or something like that. And you can rate yourself like, I kind of fit like at a 2, or I fit at a 7. But that's what I think on that part.
All right. Shit, brain fart. Did you have another topic you wanted to go to next, Destiny? And while I try to remember.
Yeah, no worries. So, my next one, I'm curious, as far as characters go in like TV shows, movies, cartoons is included. Is there a character that you saw? And I know Tim mentioned the Power Ranger, but if you have another one, you can mention it. And it can be like TV shows, movies, whatever. Was there a character or an actor or an actress that kind of initiated like, ooh, I don't know, I'm feeling things for this gender kind of thing? And you guys can go whenever. It's no specific person first.
Trying to decide the quintessential response to this because my answer is going to seem unorthodox, but I'll get you to the conclusion and why I'm choosing this.
Okay.
I would say Willow and Tara from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We're taking it back, and it's not necessarily that when I saw their relationship portrayed on the small screen, I said, "Ooh la la, I'm attracted to women." It was, "Oh shit, like here are two people of the same gender expressing intimacy with one another, and it's just part of the plot. Like it's not like some little grab. It's happening." And I think prior to that wasn't prior to like I think 97 when Ellen came out, that hadn't been on the small screen, not really. And so that was a big thing for me specifically, just seeing just that intimacy. I was like, holy shit, oh my god. And then of course, you have shows like Will and Grace on the air as well, also doing the same thing, but theirs was more like, of course, comedic and slapstick. So it's like, oh, they're gay, but it's funny, ha ha ha. Whereas like, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is portraying this lesbian relationship. It's like, oh, they're gay and it's serious. Oh, and they're saving the world. So it's like there's also these different like these connotations, right, that come in the media that we're consuming, as far as like these characters aren't coded to be villains; they're coded to be heroes. And I'm like, that's so neat.
Yeah, I think the queer coding that comes with villains is interesting.
I would say for me, it would be when I lifted a brow at the thought of women, it was The Mummy, the movie The Mummy.
Oh, she's gorgeous.
I probably could have like fucked the entire cast in my brain. And I think that's like the bisexual movie where The Mummy, it was like there was attractive men and women, and it was just like you were like confused, like which one's the nicest looking. But that was probably my the whole cast of The Mummy, not even one person, just that movie specifically.
So I guess the first that I can recall would be Shania Twain's That Don't Impress Me Much.
Oh man.
I guess that was more of like
Exactly, Moon.
Yeah, okay. I feel something, like a lot of something. But I think also the unspoken sexual tension in Cadet Kelly, really.
Girl.
That's like my earliest realizing of being like, yeah.
Okay, did you have any specific characters? And cartoons are the same. Okay, listen, I liked Simba, grown-up Simba in Lion King. I'm not
Togo and Kiara can get it, okay?
Yeah, him too. But
Okay,
anybody.
I'm right on the same page because I talked a little bit about when I was really young, but I think when I first like understood what it was, what like my attraction, everything, was in the form of Koga from Inuyasha, because man, he could get it. Oh, I don't know what I think it was like the armor over his just beautiful chest and his deep voice. I don't know. There was just something about him. And then I remember too, like when Titanic came out on home video, my mom like watched it religiously. And there's that scene where he's drawing her.
Yeah.
And she always made us leave the room, but me and my sisters would sneak the tape out into our own VCR. I'm really dating myself here. And we'd watch it, and because kids got to get into what's forbidden. So I remember watching it and seeing Kate Winslet just fully naked, and I thought, okay, well that's pretty, but it didn't really do anything for me. But when they were in the car having sex, I was looking for
yes.
Leo. I was like, show us butt or something, and I just remember any kind of sexual situation in a film, I was always just pinpointed to the man. It just as a natural, my eyes just darted over. But I think part of the problem with what I have with I think with representation as far as queer coding and all that stuff is I used to get angry because I never saw a gay character on television or movies that I could identify with, because it always felt like some sort of caricature stereotype of this is what a gay man is. And I always hated that. So I struggled to find any kind of identity or someone I could identify with as a gay man on television for a long time.
Yeah, that's we grew up in a very interesting time, I think, too, because in TV, like Tim said, growing up, it was you saw only straight people for the most part. It was all straight relationships. It was all man woman as the main characters, the main love interests, and then now you have the Gen Zers who are now growing up, and there's so much gay television. There's a gay channel, or there's probably several gay. I don't really watch cable anymore. But there's so much gay content, it's positivity for the LGBT, and showing them. That's why there's so many more people coming out. They feel more comfortable. They're open to accepting other people. Whereas you notice the generation before us and the one before that one, the boomers, they're not as open to it because they were raised so religiously and weren't open to it because they weren't educated on it. But I feel for you guys, Tim and Jay, because the whole masculine thing, everybody is when you think of a gay person, for some reason, and I don't think it, but for the longest time before we actually had appropriate representation, you think of a gay man like this, where he's just oh my God, blah, 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 blah. But that's not it. I've seen so many masculine gay men, super, lifts weights, goes to the gym, drinks beer, just goes to the bars, hangs out, talks normally. You would never know. And that's breaking the stereotype. And I love seeing the different kinds of, gay and bisexual and pansexual, how people are coming out as non-binary. It's honestly, TV is so important when it comes to the representation of LGBT, and just kind of helping people understand that it's a normal thing now. Just felt like that's nice.
Yeah, I think one of the nice things it also is as far as lesbians or women who are into women, like I am, you don't have to have I felt like growing up the only reason that the girls were allowed to kiss was for the validation of males looking onward. That was the only reason you were allowed to exist, is because you were giving some type of gratification to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
That, and there's the stereotype with lesbians that there's always going to be one butch, and even just I learned this just maybe 5 years ago, because it's still engraved in some people's minds that you can have two feminine gay women together. They could be all dresses and just super feminine, loves to do hair, things like that. It's not always just one masculine, and you can sometimes have two masculine women together. It's just there's so many infinite combinations. I love hearing and seeing different couples together that are LGBT. It's fun to see now.
Well, and that's... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I think a lot of that that we see, especially with this pushback on there only being one masculine and one more traditionally feminine, in any relationship, not just homosexual gay, homosexual lesbian. It's carryover from this idea of ascribing a binary, that we see in heteronormative relationships. You know, you have the man and the woman, the penetrator and the penetrated, and that's just carryover. And we're trying, not we're as in like the four of us right now, but like the heteronormative society trying to ascribe those same situations and stations onto homosexual relationships. And I guess I can see in some ways that that's their attempt to better understand what they don't know, but really it's just limiting. Because then we also we start getting into the murkier waters of a discourse of you mentioned lipstick lesbian and lip lesbian, those stereotypes that were I don't hear them as much anymore. They were super big, but you also have in the gay male community, top and bottom. Like that's like a big debated thing. It's so stupid because it's like you're just further reducing it to, and I'm using a general you, further reducing it to a binary where it's like, I love right now where we're at as a society. Everybody's coming out, and there are all these new identities and sexualities that we're learning about, and we're discovering, and we're growing to learn more of. But prior to that, it was just gay, lesbian, trans, and we're branching, and we're finding the language for these new things that we were not just operating in a binary. And I'm like, oh, this is great because a binary is just so limiting. Like, there's so much more to the world. Like, if I have to work until I'm 55 and then die, I don't, like, I want to know more than just one or two things. Jesus. Sorry.
Well, and I think that society's one of the ways they deal with things is they put things in categories. Just literally everything they put into categories. So they have to try and categorize these different orientations somehow. And, you know, before when everything was so repressed, you know, everybody was funneled in these two little categories. And now that everybody's able to open up and talk more freely without the backlash that there used to be. And granted, there's still backlash, but I mean, we're in a place where we can start seeing the differences. We're not all just funneled into these nice, neat little stacks. I mean, you can have a wide array of different types of personalities and orientations and how people see the world. You know, it's not just one or the other. All right, Moon, take care. Joy. Yeah, because I want to read something off that Moon put here, and unfortunately he's gotta go, but I didn't want to interrupt you guys. But so a lot of the stigma he puts here is related to biblical excuses for persecutions. You know, in the Old Testament, it says a man shall not lay with a man. But when we think about how like religion has persecuted anybody who is not straight, you know, it comes back to a time that people don't think about when the Old Testament was written. A lot of the laws, especially in, I think it was Exodus, a lot of the laws written for the Jews that the Christians adopted, such as a man shall not lay with a man, was written because of the time that it was, you know, because there was this huge decimation of the Jewish population. So they didn't want men to lay with men because they wanted to be able to repopulate. You know, a lot of the laws were written for the people at the time based on what was happening in their society. But religiously, they kept moving it forward. You know, and then of course there's the hypocrisy of, you know, the masculine guy who is against anybody being gay, but sits there and gets off to lesbian porn. You know, huge hypocrisy right there.
So I respectfully disagree as far as the timing of when that was, as far as when it was. I personally think it was more recently based upon the tellings of the evangelicals wanted to maintain their power and status within politics. And the only way that they were going to do that is to find some hold of something to keep on as a traditional sense. So the original quoting of it, of saying, you know, man cannot lie with man, was actually man cannot lie with little boy, you know. So there was rewritten, there was like a bunch of rewriting of the Bible so it would fit in line with more of the evangelical side of things, so that evangelicals could maintain their power within politics.
Well, no, I can't argue with that because I think that they do use that for their agendas. Because to me, it started with the whole what was in the Bible, but and there were persecutions before that too, based on what society you're in. So it didn't start with just the Bible either. But I do agree that in more recent times, it is definitely used as fear mongering to get you to rally behind a certain campaigner.
Yeah. I mean, it's I feel like
Ms. Mo, thank you for the
it's
follow.
it's silly, and I'm not saying that religion is silly because I appreciate religion. I think that it's a beautiful thing. It's just uh, the whole quote of you're paraphrasing a book written so long ago, and then people are still,
While not also maintaining the same energy for the what else was said in
yeah,
that.
like mixing fabrics and whatnot.
Eating shrimp, eating pork, like
Yeah. But we are getting better, so there's that. I mean, I think it's more so because the sexists and the homophobic people are dying off, thankfully, and the more people that are being born into this kind of proactive world are a little bit more accepting, and hopefully will continue to teach that on to their children if they have them, and then it'll just keep getting hopefully better from there. Same thing with racism.
Right. And I think because if you look at all the different religions that are out there, and this is a topic for another day, another rant too, but the majority of religions out there all teach the same basic thing: obey your parents, be kind to your neighbors, do good, you know, treat others how you want to be treated. All of those things. And those things are the ones that should definitely continue on through time. But a lot of these other laws that got documented, they were documented for the way that the society and the world was at the time. And I think if religion was far more encompassing, they are getting better at it, but God, especially for the time when Jesus was here, was saying to love everybody. Well, he didn't say love everybody except for the lesbians and the gays. No, he didn't. He says love everybody. So I think everyone just needs, those that are homophobic and they use religion as an excuse need to get with the times. And I really wonder the people who are homophobic. I'm wondering if they are homophobic because they are a different orientation themselves and they're afraid to admit it.
I would love to encounter somebody who is respectfully homophobic. I don't know if I know that doesn't sound right together, but somebody who's willing to give their side as to why they are homophobic. And that way, I would have a very interesting
people who
debate.
are like love the sinner, not the sin.
Right. So, like, just somebody who's open about talking about it and just kind of give me insight, because I just can't understand why, aside from specifically religious reasons, why somebody would be so homophobic. But
I think it would come down to one of two things. Either they don't understand it, and people are afraid of things that they don't understand, which is why I think a lot more talks like this need to happen just to bring an air of normalcy to it. But as well as there's also the fact that, maybe they're gay, or maybe they're lesbian, and they were raised in an area where I don't want to admit that I'm this way because I was raised that it's wrong that it's this way. So to cover up for that, I'm going to go an extreme in the other direction.
right. So let's segue out of like the religious aspect, just in case we get into a little hairy situation. Just in case somebody might be here and might be a little sensitive to like religious stuff, we'll try to avoid staying on the topic. But does anyone recall a time of being bullied because of potential like people assuming like what you were? Or did you witness somebody being bullied for being LGBT that you were in the vicinity of? I personally am in an area where the schools we were in, I didn't see any bullying myself for somebody being like gay or perceived to be gay. I also was never bullied for being kind of masculine because they knew that I would probably kick their ass because I was huge. But
The streets.
right. I know that Tim and I went to the same high school. Kasey, I don't think we went to school together. We became really good friends after school. But did you guys ever experience any kind of bullying yourself? Or, and this has to do with like sexuality, like were they like, oh, you're butch, or oh, you act gay, or something like, you know what I mean? Did you guys experience anything like that?
All the time in middle school. Like I was probably bullied like the first moment in 6th grade, probably all the way up through senior year, although it did taper off significantly in high school. But because I was, I was skinny and I was small and my voice was very high pitched. And this was like puberty, so all the boys were getting like their deep voices at that point, but I really wasn't. So almost immediately upon entering middle school, I was bullied, and it really never ended until I graduated. And I think that's stuck with me, honestly, because I'm like kind of paranoid about like, oh my gosh, is somebody saying something about me now because I'm gay? You know, the street is like sometimes a nightmare because I'm like, I don't know who's gonna say what about me, you know, because I have had that experience of like walking down the street and someone yells faggot at me. But yeah, bullying was a very normal occurrence in my life, and what sucked about it was I buried down my sexuality because not only was I bullied at school, but at home, you know, I witnessed things like my grandmother, God love her, wonderful person, but she used to like yell and scream about gay people being, you know, not savable by Jesus. You know, murderers could be saved, rapists could be saved, but gay people cannot be, you know, and stuff like that. And then my mom grimacing outwardly anytime two men would be seen kissing on television. So to kind of grow up in that atmosphere of, well, I'm not safe at home really, and I'm not safe at school, so I'm not safe anywhere. So it was really troubling to be gay in the early 2000s for me. I don't know about you guys if it was as bad or worse. I hope it wasn't worse.
Tim, I don't know. Obviously, I wasn't with you at every point, but were you bullied at all? Because so Tim came off as straight for a while, and he can still. I feel like Tim can kind of go both ways. He's got a very much of he's got a masculine side. He's also got his more feminine side when he's feeling sassy and after he's had a couple glasses of wine. But from what I saw, we were really good friends in high school. Like we were best friends in 10th grade. And I had girls that would come up to me and ask if he was single. And I was like, he hadn't come out, but I knew. And I was like, I mean, you can ask him yourself because I wasn't going to out him. And so he came off that way. I don't know if anybody actually like suspected you of anything. Did you have any experience, Tim?
I would say a lot of the girls that we went to school with had no clue that I was a raging homosexual. But the guys in our school did. And so I wouldn't say I was certainly more bullied at home than I ever was at school. I will 100% say that. And I can only really recall maybe like half a dozen instances in school where sexuality was like weaponized against me. God, when did we meet? 10th grade? Like, we're taking it back here. I remember Mean Girls had come out, and little Katie Heron was eating her lunch in a bathroom stall, and I was like, that's a sanitary issue. So I would eat my lunch at the library, so I would just, like, preemptively remove myself from a lot of social situations until we met in theater, and I was kind of, like, keeping feelers out for which spaces I thought might be safe spaces. And I didn't realize I was doing this until much later, because I was like, why did I eat in the library? Like, that's such a weird decision. Like, I had no real rationalization for it. Like, I would just try to avoid situations where best I could.
Just kind of instinctually.
Yeah, and like I really had no rhyme or reason, and like I remember at the time we had to get like I think we had to get our planner signed so that we had like a documented reason on why we were leaving the cafeteria, where we were going. Um, and I was like, oh, I want to read my Angel and Buffy the Vampire Slayer book in peace and quiet. Like I wasn't reading my Buffy the Vampire Slayer book. I was like probably doodling, but like I was just removing myself from possibilities of those instances.
That's understandable. Kasey, do
Yeah,
you have any experiences?
No, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Was that
Oh, I
Jay?
was just gonna say, I wish I had done that because I kind of overcompensated a lot. Where like gay bashing was a thing, so I'd partake in gay bashing because I wanted to present myself as, oh, I'm not gay because y'all have made it clear that this is not an okay thing, and I was still like figuring out myself. So yeah, I was like homophobic in middle school when I didn't understand what I was doing, what I was saying, but just to fit in, to try to like survive, to keep my head up, like, yeah,
You were
absolutely would
going
partake.
through it then.
Do what?
You were going through it then, because if you ended up also gay bashing while gay, that's definitely a sign of like I'm just trying to not be beat up because of who I am as a person.
Yeah,
Well,
no, exactly.
And when you're in a hostile environment like that, like that's just self-preservation. Like I don't have that as far as orientation goes, but I have that as far as religion goes. I live in a very Catholic area since 2000, and I'm pagan. I am afraid because like they always ask you when you go to the hospital, like what religion are you? And I always decline to answer because I fear I may actually get treated differently at work because everyone is so Catholic. You know, it's not quite the same thing, but I understand to a degree where I can empathize that, you know, you do it to survive because my dad is a Bible thumper who is always, you know, wanting me to go back to church. And like, so yeah, for a while I did the same thing of speaking out against people who weren't a Christian denomination, but when myself, I'm not.
That's good that you at least speak out on it too.
I can never tell him. I can't come out of the closet in that way to him. To my mother, yes, my mother understands, and she completely gets it that it's not Satan worship. None of that is, unless you're actually a Satan worshiper. But there's just like, it's not just gay or lesbian. There's so many different spectrums to it. It's the same thing for religion.
Right.
But Kasey, I mean, did you ever run into any problems or bad instances yourself?
So like when I was a kid, I was easily confused as a boy for the longest time. And even like when Tim, you met me, I guess there were like moments where like I could be passing for male or female. So for the longest time, like I would get things about that. But I would always be like proudful about it, of being like, wow, I could fool you that I was, you know, a boy or whatever. And then I hit like high school and did the whole like reinventing thing because I was like, I'm going to a new school, let me figure it out and everything like that. And so then I started dressing more like effeminate and whatnot, but then reverted very quickly to just, you know, basketball shorts and t-shirts because it was the easiest thing because I was a student athlete. But I didn't really get anything. I definitely witnessed it and saw it, and I was definitely the reason why I got into bar fights quite a bit in my youth.
You never. Still getting to know you, Kasey, and I'm not surprised.
Kasey and her bar fights go a ways back.
Yeah, so like definitely when people, you know, were throwing around slurs or trying to be bullies about something, I'd give them the opportunity to correct themselves, and when they didn't, things escalated.
Does Kasey have a mean left hook?
Yeah. I think she's still. I'm not gonna say that there's a warrant in a particular city, but like I know that if she goes back into said bar, she knows exactly which one.
I'm barred
There's
from
there's a group of people who are waiting for her.
Oh,
like there's pictures of me on certain bars where like it says automatically to call the cops if I'm there.
All right. So always have Kasey as a friend, not an enemy. Got it.
We've discussed the
Take care, Maple.
the childhood, growing up in it. So do you guys still face hardships to this day, whether it's in work, with family, or amongst any kind of your friends? Do you still experience homosexual, or not homosexuality? We are experiencing homosexuality, homophobia. That's what I was thinking of. Do you
Use your
still- do you ex-
words.
I know. Still, I haven't had coffee. Okay. But have you experienced homophobia still?
4:30 in the afternoon.
I know it probably isn't as much, but if you do, where are you experiencing that?
So I don't think I experienced homophobia or anything, but I definitely experienced biphobia. And granted, I don't experience it at the same level as if I were a male presenting, because unfortunately, love you, my bi kings out there, but unfortunately, people do treat bi men on a different standard. They're almost regarded as like more dirty. I've heard some of them tell me, and they feel ashamed about it. But I think one of the biggest things is as far as when you tell someone like that you are bi, in their minds, they automatically assume that means you're more promiscuous. And while I am promiscuous as hell, they equate that to non-monogamy, and that I'll be like a serial cheater and like can't be taken seriously as a result of it, or I'm just there to satisfy whatever sexual urges someone has, when that's not the case.
Yeah, and I think that just goes back to stereotypes and hypocrisy. Because, like, for, the whole thing about a guy sitting there being homophobic, but yet it's okay to watch lesbian porn, it should be equally as acceptable for a guy to be bi as it is a female.
Agreed.
Some of that stigma for bisexual men, it kind of harkens back to homophobia, where it's that whole,
Yes.
oh, this man is fooling with another man. That's so ooh, the scandal. And that's a bigger question. Like, at what point do you reconcile that? No, this person is just capable of more love than your little bigoted heart ever had. Silly.
No, I wonder, because speaking of bisexuality, because I just remembered, when I first came out to my friend in high school, I initially came out as bisexual because I knew I wasn't, but I said that because I felt like on some level it was safer to come out as bisexual than gay. And I don't really know why. I think maybe it was because, like, oh well, I guess as my family sees it, I could still, date a woman or feasibly marry a woman, so it's safer that way, but I'm still attracted to men. But I don't know, like, I wonder about that. Like, what does that mean? Like, why did I think it was safer to be bisexual?
Yeah, I
Also
think
the
that
flip side of that is people saying, why can't you just choose one? Why do you have to have all these options? I don't know. Like, honestly, would I at this point prefer to just be a straight up lesbian? Probably. But I can't help with what I like when I see it, when I like it,
You like what you like. Like, one of my high school friends, she came out as being bi to her mother, and her mom's like, no, you can't. Bi is not a thing. You can't be bi. It's one or the other. If you're, again, the whole you're choosing to be this way, kind of stereotype.
And then there's the defending that has to occur, like, where people are like, well, I've never seen you hook up with someone or heard you have relations with someone how can you claim the bi title if you've only been this way with statistically from what we see? And I think that's frustrating too.
Yeah. Well, they're not in your mind. They don't know what gets your lady boner going. But it's true though, because the thing is that, okay, so for the bi standpoint, like, you can be bi and you can still be monogamous. You know, it's just whatever personality wins out, whether it's in a man or a woman. But then you can also be bi and be polygamous. And then that just gets into a whole different spectrum in and of itself. But people, of course, have to put things into nice, neat little boxes that make sense for them. And it's not black and white. It's so many different shades of color that you can't categorize it just one way or the other.
And I think too, we run into, and I'm using a general as like a society, we run into this issue where it's like, well, this is the way that things have always been, and this is the way that I have done things following the way that things have always been. And so seeing somebody be polyamorous, somebody being bisexual, or just different in general, like this hypothetical person of mine doesn't know necessarily at first how to react to that, because it's new and it's going against what is the heteronormative staple that has been weirdly co-opted by society. So it's just a matter of like having these discourses and really saying like, no, what is the scope of sexuality? What is the scope of a relationship? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not necessarily even society's to dictate. It's that individual relationship.
100%.
You have like the open relationships, the closed relationships, monogamous relationships, polyamorous relationships, closed polyamorous relationships. Like there's so much.
I'd say, and this is where I get confused because, we have so many boxes now, and in a way it's liberating for so many people, like, to see, oh, I don't have to just check this man, check this, I'm a woman, check this, I'm a straight man, check this, I'm a straight woman. There's so many more like identifiers out there, which is so great and liberating. But then at the same time I think about it and I'm like, well, there's just more boxes on the page. Is it liberating really? Because we're still trying to figure out which boxes pertain to us, when really, like, should we just say fuck the boxes, fuck the identifiers, like just be whatever organic person you're going to be? So I wonder too, like, the good versus bad, like, just situation of like having more options, and should we just disrupt that and get rid of all the options and just identify however the hell you want to, and no one question it?
I would 100% agree. That's where we need to go. The only place where we need a label is on your health form at the hospital. And that's just for medical treatments, because there are biological differences when you're doing treatments. There should be basically 3 boxes, and not based off sexual orientation, based off of biology. You're either female, male, or trans. And that has 0 to do with sexual orientation, only for the use of medical treatment. And other than that, like, I remember when the pride flag used to be only a couple of colors, and now look at what we have that's currently on my screen, trying to encompass everything. And I know that doesn't even encompass everything that's out there. So I think as a society, we need to get to a point where something like this isn't necessary, maybe for almost a heritage sort of thing, and remembering your history of how things used to be. But as far as moving forward, no, I don't think we should feel like we have to put things in labels, that people are just people. And thank you for that, Destiny. I have no clue what the fuck that was.
That's fine.
Somebody just put ASCII art in my chat.
I think one of the things that comes to mind also that I struggle with is as far as the discourse between bisexual and pansexuals, and that I feel like at least in my experience of people relegating you to some sort of like box, like the notion that because I identify as bisexual, it means I'm not open to any genders aside from male and female, and that's not necessarily true. And then the argument of, well, then why don't you identify as pansexual then?
Yeah, I've been struggling with that too, because I'm like, are you, on one hand, you identify as bisexual, but then you have people like saying, oh, why don't you just choose one, either be gay or straight? But then it's like, well, no, I'm bisexual, I'm attracted to both. But then you have another end of the conversation where it's like, well, does that mean you're not going to go for a non-binary person or a transgender man or a transgender? So it's like, are you being
They really do,
biphobic?
Sparhawk.
Are you being transphobic? It's like, I get confused with that too, and I'm like, I don't even know.
Well,
I enjoy the term queer because
Yeah.
for a long time was such a negative name, but it honestly encompasses all of the LGBT, because if you really don't feel like you fit in a specific like category, which I really don't, that's why demisexual is just kind of like a thing that kind of registers with me. I sometimes switch between demisexual and queer because some people don't know what demisexual is, and when you say queer, they're like, okay, well, you're somewhere with, well, people who know what queer is now, and not people that are like 50 plus, because if you say queer there, they're like, you're automatically gay, you're a gay lady. But just a spectrum of, okay, well, you are somewhere within the spectrum of being either straight or gay, and you like whatever you like. That's why I enjoy the queer term.
I vote we get back to the original meaning of queer, which meant that you were strange or different, and not necessarily what your orientation is. And Sparhawk here says that I believe society has a problem deciphering the difference between sexual orientation and what gender you are. Even some portion of, the LGBTQ community. And it has problems of its own. And I think that what it should, in my own opinion, at the end of the day, it comes down to you like what you like. The fact of having to put labels on it is I'm very disagreeable to, because you put a label on something and it can have a lot of negative connotations right off the bat. People are people first, and that's what my mother had always taught me, and I completely agree. Anything else is just a descriptor of what makes you who you are, whether it's your cultural heritage, what country your ancestors came from, color of your skin, the color of your hair and your eyes, and your sexual orientation to me is just one of those descriptors. And I don't feel like we should be putting people into a box, because to me that also provides a lot of limitations, meaning that, oh, well, if I'm this way, that means I have to fit into one of these boxes, and that's just not the case. I mean, it's to me, it's like if you took all these colors from the pride flag as paint, put it in a pool and swirled it around a little bit, you're going to have a lot of different shades, not just a solid color. And to me, that's really what the pool of sexual orientation is a huge mixture, and without a box to put somebody in.
Go ahead, Jay.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I think I'm glad we brought up gender too, because I think this is another area in the LGBTQ plus community where it kind of gets hairy, because we now have in the social discourse now pronouns, which is so great for so many people who are like non-binary. We have the they them term, and we have people asking for pronouns, and it's very respectful. But then I question it, because I get uncomfortable when people ask me my pronouns, because I don't want to say, oh, I'm only he him, but then I'm like, I don't identify as she her either, but they them doesn't feel right. So I'm like, call me whatever pronoun feels comfortable with you. I don't care as long as it's respectful. But then am I erasing a part of the non-binary people who have felt like they can't identify as one or the other? They need the they them. So I don't know, is that where that plays into how we perform gender and how it affects us in the LGBTQ plus community, as far as being harmful to non-binary people or transgender people or anyone who's outside of the socially structured gender norm.
I want to underline something.
Right there with you, Jay.
Yeah, Jay, I want to underline something you said. As long as it's respectful. because like within every group, there's always these extremists. Like I have seen people and read stories of people going off the wall because they're not being referred to as the pronoun that they want now, or being upset because somebody asked, what is the proper pronoun that I should call you? And I think ultimately, as long as the person is being respectful, because for the longest time, I would still refer to Amala as him because, it gets ingrained in your brain from when you first meet somebody, what you're calling them, him, her, or they. And making that switch afterwards, I would still mess up all the time. But while some people get offended, Amala was never offended with me because I wasn't being disrespectful. If a person has no preference, I don't think that it is an insult to others in this pool, because I think it really is on an individual basis what the person prefers. But it always should be done in a respectful connotation.
Absolutely. And intent is in there too. Because, like, if I say, I actually had a non binary professor this past semester, and I kept referring to them as she, and I would just hit myself over the head, but I didn't mean it in like a derogatory way. It was just like one of those like slips. Because, a part of the problem, I think, too, is it's such a new thing for us in this society that calling someone they, them feels, kind of weird at first because we haven't been doing it. Um, but I mean, as long as you're willing to learn and make and correct yourself and learn to self correct, you're doing okay. But it's like you have those people who are like just completely far out about it. And it's like if you don't get it right immediately, you're canceled,
Right. I hate that.
Well, that or the people who go into like a 30-minute apology about it. Like it happens. I do it from time to time as far as correctly misgendering. But when someone corrects you, you say, thank you for correcting me, use the proper pronoun and move on. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to have like a mental breakdown of being like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Because I feel like at that point it gets disingenuous. Like,
But I think there's also the fact of we are wired as kids that use the he or she based off of the physical appearance that you see in front of you. And I think as our society continues to progress and as the younger generation grows up, I think we're going to see a lot more acceptance and, because there's still going to be like a lot of the first meetings saying he or she. And if they're a non-binary person, a quick little correction like Kasey was saying and then move on. I think it'll get a lot easier in time. But it is very much like, let's say as an example that Destiny suddenly wants to be known as a man. I'm probably going to say she a lot before I finally say he, because I'm used to the calling him off of the physical appearance. And I think that's something that has to be kept in mind too.
And it, like hypothetically, had I turned into if I was transitioning into being a man and people still called me she, I would be understanding because I would understand where they came from. I personally wouldn't be upset if somebody called me she. I would just like he, just correcting them politely, and then we just move on. Just as long as they aren't doing it like you're a she, like trying to stick a knife in it. That's the only part. But as long as you're just just using proactive ways of correcting yourself, I feel like that's the direction. As long as we keep going in that direction, we're fine. On the subject of struggles, did you have something else to say, Mel?
Oh, I was going to go on to something else, but take it away.
No, I was just going to say, to wrap up the struggles, we know that there's a lot of LGBT struggles still to this day, especially for transgendered women, transgender women and men of color.
Yes.
They're the ones who seem to face the most backlash and things. And honestly, the transgender role in general, especially when it comes to the bathroom situation, we're still facing a lot of things. And I say we, and the we encompasses allies as well. because we're all a group. We're trying to fight for the rights of, you know, the LGBT plus communities. We're still going through it. There's still shootings. There's still people being targeted, people being cornered and beat up because of how they act, how they look, what they're doing in life.
Still having the
So
defense
we-
of the panic, trans or gay panic
And
being a viable defense in a murder situation.
and it's just the struggles are still there. So while we aren't experiencing terrible backlash and terrible struggles with being in the LGBT plus category, there's still people out there that are not doing so well, and we still need to remember that. You can go ahead with yours, Mel. I just wanted to wrap that up.
Oh, no problem. Sorry, I'm reading something Sparhawk just put out into
No
chat.
worries.
So I'm just gonna read this off. I was trying to make sure I was reading this correctly, but you know, just to put this out there, he says, he feels that a non-binary person is like someone who is black or white and saying that they are the other. They/them will have a harder time even in our children. So basically, if I'm understanding this correctly, Sparhawk, so basically you're saying that like even in the current children generation right now, somebody who is non-binary is going to have an even harder time than say the stereotypical gay or lesbian, as far as acceptance and identity. And well, he puts a response in here. I'm just okay. So yes, that is correct, and I'm gonna agree with that too, because to me, like, it was gay, lesbian, and bi, and then it moved on to transgender being the next hurdle. And I think the next hurdle beyond transgender is the non-binary, because I mean, we hear the phrase, but I mean, at least in the area I'm at, I don't really encounter it all that much. I haven't encountered any transgender in my area. I've encountered a couple bi, a couple lesbian, and there is a gay man I work with, and we don't even openly talk about it at work. Everybody's just accepting of him as a person, which I find amazing for the area I live in. You know, because he's probably one of the best personalities and the best coworkers I've got. But I do feel that the non-binary is going to have the biggest problem, even for the current generation of children, because it is based on visuals.
I feel a little indifferent on it, only because I know that we're making such, especially these younger generations, being siblings even to these younger kids, being that we're trying to push progressively towards pro-LGBT. I feel like there is a potential, depending on how they're raised and what area they're in, because that's still always a factor too. Like you said, you're from like a rural area where not many people come out as gay or trans. Everybody's just, you know, it's religion, and that's basically what it is. Whereas where I come from, I'm by the beach, I'm near cities, and you know, there's gay people everywhere, which thank God. But I feel like it just depends on the area. But I feel like if you get the right kind of parents, like I don't want kids, but if I ever did have one, I would hope my kid is gay, because then I have more fun with my kid. Not saying that straight people aren't fun. I'm just saying, you know, just saying. But I would raise them to enjoy whatever skin they're in. It doesn't matter. Don't put labels on it, kind of thing. So I don't know. I feel like it kind of depends on how they're raised in area.
Well, that's exactly it, though, because like Moon, before he left, he was saying, he's like, if my two sons ever come out as gay, the first thing that they're going to get is a giant hug, and then for a reminder to go clean your room. But which I think is great, because I think more parents need to be open about how accepting that they are, so their child never fears coming out to their parents, because that has the potential to be one of the biggest support groups there at home, and it's not always that case. as we've heard today. But I think that on the coast, like the areas that are most populated, I think you're absolutely right with that, Destiny. There's going to be a lot quicker for acceptance and social shifting towards that acceptance. But half of the nation is these rural small communities that it takes literally a decade for those kind of concepts to come over here as being the new social norm. So while for this generation of kids, they're not going to have as much trouble in the higher population densities, they are going to have a problem, especially like rural Midwest where I live. It's going to be difficult for them. And it's unfortunate. But I think as long as people openly talk as we are now, we might help speed up that transition to the rural communities.
Sounds good. That sounds pretty good. Dogs are barking.
Boof.
Yeah. Was that your other topic that you were going to bring up?
Yeah, basically just like where we are today with the social acceptance of different orientations and where we think it's going to go and say, well, things are moving so fast now here. I was going to say the next 10 years, but let's go with the next 5 years. Like where do you think these communities are going to go as far as social acceptance is concerned?
Personally feel like it's going to get better over time. We just need to let the homophobes die. And that's just the main way of putting it. Once they start, going off to the, retirement homes or whatnot, and you have the younger generation that are pushing the acceptance that we're trying to push out there, it'll get a lot better, I think, because we're going to be raising our kids to be even more accepting, in a more accepting environment than we were even in. At least that's what I take from it when it comes to parenting. What you try to do is you try to give your kids a better life than you even had. So if we're trying to push on that accepting agenda kind of thing where it's like, hey, just accept everyone for who they are and teach them that everyone's different. We're not all the same. I can only expect that, things are going to get better, but you're still going to have those stupid people that want to, shoot up a gay club or, try to push back against the acceptance that we're all trying to push on into the world. But I think it'll just keep getting better. It's just like with time, it just keeps getting better.
MNJ, how do you feel about what the next 5 years might bring?
I think like but there's still so much that
Quiet, Tim.
Especially just the cis white male patriarchy as it stands.
You might be a bit far away from the mic. I can barely hear you.
Oh, sorry. Jay took my other AirPod and started walking away. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I think there's just still so much to do as far as dismantling the cis white patriarchy as we know it now. There's still so much to do. I'm hopeful, but Kasey brought it up earlier, but just recognizing intersectionality, not just in sexuality, but also in gender, and just being more, we've talked about it in the last 2 hours, but more focused on intentionality. I don't want to say respected politics, it distracts, but being respectful of each other, just as far as being genuinely compassionate. I'm having a word for it, so I'll let Jay carry it.
Well, I don't know. I want to feel hopeful, but I think the struggle is always going to be there, unfortunately. I just think, as long as I've always believed, as long as there's a minority of a certain group, there's always going to be a struggle. And I mean, who knows? I could be wrong. Like maybe,
Oh, definitely.
like everybody will just start coming out as gay or bisexual or pansexual. I mean, who knows? I mean, that would be wonderful. But I do think there'll be a struggle, but maybe, it will get easier because I'm going to disagree a little bit with Destiny here. I don't think the homophobes need to all die. I think they need to learn how to grow as humans because I think that, but it's tough work. you know, because you do have people who get stuck in their ways. But I think of people like my mom who was, you know, very homophobic when I was younger. But I mean, the same woman who cried and was disappointed when I came out to her eventually and was just so distraught, you know, that same person cried with joy that me and Tim got engaged. So I do have a hope in people that they are, you know, changeable, that there is that instinct to grow and learn. It's not maybe with everybody, but the work is always going to be on the shoulders of those who are in any way oppressed to change the minds of those who are the oppressors, unfortunately. And that's the hard work that needs to be done, because accountability is I think is very tough for people, for everybody. And I mean, even in the LGBTQ plus community, I mean, we can even throw race in there, because white gay men are, you know, they have it leaps and bounds much easier than gay men of color. And that's something that we need to hold ourselves accountable on, is recognizing the struggles within our group and the problems within our group, because there is transphobia in the gay community, there is biphobia in the gay community, there's these kind of branches of it in the LGBTQ plus community. So I think self accountability is important, but it's very hard. But I think it's heading in the right direction, but it's hard work.
And actually thinking about it, I think both you and Destiny are right. It's going to be a mixture, because you are going to have the people who will be able to change over time through education and realizations, but you're going to have the people who are just stubborn as fuck, heels in the ground. They're never going to change. And even Carthen is saying that over the next decade, that older generation, as they fall off, go into nursing homes, you know, nature takes its course, you know, and that generation dies out. You know, between that and people educating themselves, both methods, I believe, will help really bring things to a better place. Kasey, how do you feel?
I disagree. I think that saying that, oh, once the boomers die off, that bigotry is going to be lessened. I think there's the same amount of bigotry in our generation and the generations under us, because of the fact that there's this progression that keeps being pushed amongst generations, and until it directly impacts them in some way, a lot of people won't change. So I am hopeful in the sense that things will change, but it is still going to be a long, hard road to get things to change for the better.
Kind of like nurtured bigotry, kind of like how mentalities are in the deeper South against race, sort of deal.
Well, it's not just the deeper South. I mean, you have it up here.
Well, as an example, you know.
Yeah. But I think it comes to it of the transitioning the power from, like what Tim was saying, of the cis man, and changing that power dynamic to go towards a marginalized group over someone else.
Well, I think it's unfortunate too, because in society, it doesn't matter what decade we're in, through history or into the future, there is always a phobia towards a group of people. You know, because you watch what happened after COVID came out. You know, Asians had always been targeted, and for one reason or another, whether it was back during mass immigration for the building of the railroads, to World War II with Japanese, and now Asians are getting targeted after COVID, and for the fact that news broadcasters had to be out, no, you cannot get COVID from eating Chinese food. You know, we always, as a society, are targeting something. And so I feel that, you know, there's always a race or ethnicity that gets targeted, and there's always a sexuality that gets targeted. And unfortunately, as much as I want to see it die out completely, I don't think it ever will. But if we can get the overwhelming numbers of those who are full of bigotry to be the minority, then we start heading towards a major win. And then we can persecute them. No, I really don't wish that. I really wish everybody would be able to get along and accept everybody for who they are. But you know, I think if somebody who is very phobic got a taste of their own medicine, I think they would think of life very differently. To feel what it's like to be persecuted for who you are.
Well, that's my argument, is they know.
Oh, look
what
it up,
that
Spar.
could
It's a
be
thing.
because they've been a part of the system or actually done the actions that hurt and harm another community, and they don't want to be the person who's up next. So they'll fight to maintain their status so that they're above, and they won't have to put through those things.
Right. And I mean, and to me, even just giving somebody a taste of their own medicine, I think it gets an extreme, but to a certain degree, my part of my heart that has lost faith in humanity thinks that for certain people it should be done, because no one should ever feel safe to be in their own skin. Or, sorry, feel unsafe to be in their own skin, unsafe to be at home or on the street. We are in a modern society where this should not happen. I hear the puppy whining.
Sorry.
No, I think it's cute. But just because I know, coming from someone like me, I know I haven't been persecuted like others have, because, well, I don't fall into one of those categories. But the empathetic part of myself just cries out that I want everybody to feel like they have a safe place, that they have somebody to go to, that they have somebody to support them, and that they can be loved for who they are. And I guess that's, to encompass everything we've talked about today, that is my one wish that our society moves towards, that everybody can be accepted for who they are, regardless of race, religion, or sexual orientation.
Agreed.
Agree.
All right, so we're almost at the 2-hour mark, and I know I can see Destiny's brain frying, and so is mine.
Yeah.
So, did anybody have anything that they wanted to add? Just so we make sure we've got like everything covered that we wanted to say.
I think my biggest thing is, if you are in support or you are a member, go ahead and do actions to promote this community and help out the community, whether it's going out to vote, whether it's understanding the legislation that's occurring at your local level that could be harming and impacting your community, and making that 30-second phone call that's all it takes to your representative to tell them to, protect these communities.
I'd also say having an awareness of, and this is the general you, having an awareness of your identity as far as...
Sorry, I bumped the mic.
In a white male space to disrupt it for the better good. Or I'm a white female, weaponizing your white femininity for the greater good. And I think, because that right there, that's just allyship. Just disrupting the hierarchy, but for social change, and challenging the norms that are in place that are damaging to others, not just necessarily in this in a podcast with all of us, because we're all like-minded individuals, but we're of course going to run into people who are not like-minded, and just being able to disrupt that. That's also, I agree with Kasey about voting, but it's also in our communities as well, in our social settings.
I would say a big part is to educate yourself too, because one thing that was so important last year when we saw a lot of the Black Lives Matter protests, it was for white people to educate themselves on how to be anti-racist. Don't leave it up to your Black friends or your Black loved ones. Like, educate yourself, take responsibility, because I talked about how a lot of the work is always going to be on the oppressed shoulders to fight it, but it can be made so much easier if like allies and people who want to help educate themselves and take that initiative to hold themselves accountable, to read more, to, invest themselves in the movement so that they're better equipped and they don't
Yeah,
have to,
sure.
rely on their gay friends or their bi friends to do the work for them or to have all the answers for them.
Yeah, Carthan's saying live the ideal, not just say. And I 100% agree. Like, I heard criticisms when they would see white people marching in a Black Lives Matter parade and criticizing the white people for that. I'm like, no, these are allies. These are friends who care about the people in their community. Why shouldn't they march with them? And it would be the same thing for anybody's sexual orientation. Allies should be able to use the powers that they have to spread the education, dismantle the stereotypes, dismantle the false. Oh, what's the word I'm looking for?
Right, but the only thing is as someone who comes from like a more privileged background, to understand when it's your time to just step aside and like not be the voice.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and to me, it's like, as an ally, I would want to be the ones that's marching alongside them in parades, educating somebody who is giving out very bad slurs towards another or bullying somebody else, wanting to put a stop to it. But when it comes time for a voice actually needing to speak out from personal experience, that's when the ally needs to step aside and let the person who has lived it and experienced it, that's their voice that needs to be heard, not the allies. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Our special guests in here, Tim and Jay and Kasey, as well as everybody who has joined us in chat. And I do agree, everybody in chat is, like-minded as we are in here. Very open, very accepting. And I do hope we can keep moving in that more positive direction. Because I think the fight's not done yet, but I think that we're gaining strength with each year that goes on. So, if there's nothing else to add, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, thank you for being here.
Jinx.
Hive mind. All right, so we're going to go ahead and end it here, but I believe Miss Destiny is going to be streaming in about a half an hour here. What's she going to be doing, hun?
Dead by Daylight.
Dead by Daylight. And it sounds like you're going to might be co-streaming with Mr. Ferret RP. I see he's getting his stuff ready to go.
Yep.
So have fun with that. And then here in about 3 hours at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Trips me out. I'm the odd man out. I'm in Central time. And I always have to translate things to Eastern just to make it easier. But 8 p.m. Eastern, we are going to be having girls' night. So I know that's Destiny and I believe Sofa may be joining us. Her summer schedule's a bit odd. So anyway, we will see everybody soon. And is there... Destiny, is there somebody out here that you want to host? I didn't look at my list yet.
Only person I have is the same person you hosted last time, which was Cool Blade. That's the only person I have live. But he's doing Dead Space, so I don't think that's the lines.
You know what? Let's go look at kittens. I've got Cute Avalanche up here. They are a California-based foster home for kittens. And because I don't really have anybody else up. I've got Abdul, but might be a little out in left field for some of our viewers.
Kittens. Let's end it with kittens.
Yes, we will end it with kittens. So make sure I can actually spell this right.
Thank you guys for being here, and thank you for your input. We appreciate your insight and education for some people out here who might not know some of the terms and struggles in the LGBT life.
And even if you don't know all the terms, that's okay. That's just an opportunity for more education. There are tons of materials out there that can be read. And to underline another theme that we've been saying, it's all about intent and context. So even if you hit a speed bump, it's okay. Just learn. All right. Take care, everybody. We'll see you later.
Bye.